Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I am Carrick. So we're going to be taking another stab at making a Crusader Kings 3 tutorial playthrough for complete beginners. The other one we did isn't terrible, but I think we've learned some lessons about sort of context and building that foundation for the viewers and stuff like that. So this is for people that have, maybe you're doing some research on Crusader Kings 3, or maybe you've played it a little bit and you've gone through the tutorial for Ireland. Maybe you haven't, you know what I mean? Maybe that doesn't sound particularly interesting. So we're going to be teaching the game from the ground up. Maybe you've never played a Paradox game before, right? So these are grand strategy Paradox games, and essentially they are actually basically, if we go into new game here, and this screen will kind of help you choose some interesting characters at the different time periods. I think we're going to go to, there's two different time periods to select from, right? So there's 1066, and these are like different choices that these would be interesting choices at this time period. Based on these different ideas of rags to riches, or Iberian pieces, or the fate of the, what's it called? Fate of England, right? Fate of England, so on and so forth. But I actually kind of like starting at the 867. This gives you more time to customize and create your future world, plus the world itself. Like you can see here, everything is relatively unified in a sense, right? England is like this big chunk, and Scotland is a thing, and they're a big chunk, and Norway and so on. In the earlier starts, in the 867 starts, things are more sort of fragmented in the world. And we'll see that because what we're going to do is we're going to say play as any ruler in 867. So this is going to bring us to the total world map. And from here, we can pick anybody in the world. There's hundreds or thousands of different characters that you can play as here. It's really just an insane, I mean, this is the world. This is the map. We could just click on this. We could play as this guy who might be a king or something. It's a large enough area that might be a kingdom. Who knows? But you could sort of go in here, and you can pick on these different countries. You can see what I mean by the world is a little bit more broken apart. It's a little bit more decentralized. Although some of these areas are relatively unified, like France and like East Francia, or West Francia and East Francia, and so on and so forth. So the first one that we did was we played as Bjorn, right? We did the upland, played as Bjorn, and we worked towards, I can go to a little map mode down here because there's going to be different ways that we can view the world, right? We're looking at a map, we're staring at a map, and then essentially playing through 400 to 600 years of alternate history. That's what this game is about. So we're leading a dynasty, or we're leading a sort of, I want to say a nation, but that nation will change and evolve and change and so on and so forth. You'll be following mostly the dynasty, the family house of the character that you're starting as, and their descendants and their children and so on and so forth through the ages, through 400 to 600 years of sort of a slow and creeping real time sort of ticking of the clock. We started as Upland, which is kind of like a jarldom, and that eventually became a kingdom of Sweden. And we did that very successfully as Bjorn, and we were able to even expand a little bit beyond that and so on and so forth. In the life of Bjorn. So Bjorn is a pagan Viking, right? So he's raiding people and pillaging, and he's coming over here to England and beating people up and so kinds of stuff. But let's do something that maybe is a little bit more sort of stereotypical to Crusader Kings. Let's play in Christendom, and let's play as a Catholic ruler. And maybe instead of picking, if we click on France, it's like, this is the King Charles, right? King Charles of West Francia. But that's, and that could be interesting to play as King Charles and try to hold on to everything and keep it together. But naturally, this is a powerful dude, and so on and so forth. But if we right-click on France here, we can see it's broken down into all the different vassal states that are underneath France. Within France, there's a lot of political sort of moving and grooving going on, right? We could play as the Duke of Bourbon. We could play as the Duke of Anjou. We could play as the Duke of Gascony or Toulouse or whatever. And we can even go within these different dukes, these different duchies, and we can actually see that these are broken into different counties. And we can actually play as a count. We could play as a count of this particular province, this particular county. And we could work our way up to replacing the Duke of Gascony. We could work to become the King of Francia, or actually, we could unify and get our independence from West Francia and actually unify the rightful kingdom of Aquitaine if we wanted to. And we could actually go for these different sort of kingdom titles that don't all exist right now, right? England doesn't exist in a unified form. Aquitaine doesn't exist. Burgundy doesn't exist. Italy does exist. Some of these do exist, some of these don't exist, right? And they have different levels of influence and reach over their areas. but presumably the world is broken down into these different sort of counties and duchies and kingdoms, and then finally the empires, right? The entire unified empire of Francia, for example, or Italy, for example. In fact, Italy is looking pretty healthy at the start of the game. They're not too far from actually forming an empire, maybe. I think the person that we're actually going to play, and the reality is, so there's a different experience being an independent nation like Bjorn, where he's independent to do what he wants and conquer his neighbors and form his own kingdom and have his subjects underneath him, right, and be the manager of that, and to also play as someone who's within a larger kingdom, like let's say Italy. Right-clicking on Italy, we could play one of these smaller groups. We could play, for example, the Count of Provence. So this is Count Boson of Provence. His father is Count Bozo. And this is actually a start that I have a little bit of experience with. This is a fun start. And we can actually, it's interesting because we're under the Italian kingdom right now. But technically, our land is actually more sort of culturally related to Francia and stuff like that. So that creates a little bit of a tension. And we're also on the border between all these different sort of existing kingdoms right now. We have Lotharingia here. We have East Francia that's weighing down. Of course, we're within the Kingdom of Italy, but we're on the edge of it with West Francia there. So there's a lot of sort of turmoil that can happen in this area and stuff like that. So there's a lot of political shenanigans that might unfold as we play as the Count Boson of Provence. So I think actually we're going to do this. However, what we are going to do is we're going to go into the game rules here. You can edit any of these things to your liking. I keep everything default, but I do want to make sure that we're enabling the achievements and things. So in order to do that, and also I can disable, I'm going to disable that right there just for recording purposes, the character nudity. If you're playing single player, it's not really like insane or anything like that, but just for recording, we're going to have that disabled. And then we can enable Iron Man mode, and that will make the achievements enabled. There you go. And I believe a lot of this stuff, you can customize some of this stuff, and you can still have Iron Man on, but you won't have achievements if you make the game like easier or not. I think some of these things you can adjust, and some of these things you can't adjust. You got to play with it. So you can make a very customized experience in terms of like, oh, gender equality, right? We can make it inverted so that women are more likely to be in charge than men, or we could make it equal, or we could make it the default. So exactly, inverted, actually, the achievements are available if you invert gender equality. But if you keep it equal, it actually makes it not enabled and stuff like that. So that's kind of interesting, actually. You can change the way the game works. Some of these things will affect the achievements. Some of these things, I guess, won't. So in that case, that's good. We got Iron Man on. We got the achievements. Cool beans. Of course, this is a game about telling a story, right? It's the story of the Bosanid Dynasty. And this guy actually has an interesting history. I don't know all of it. But his dynasty ended up, I think, flourishing and getting up into Lotharingia and doing some things all over the sort of the European timeline in actual history. Of course, we are playing a alternate history game, right? None of this ever falls the way that history actually fell, but instead this will be sort of a retelling of history in our own way. So we'll just save the game. We'll just call it the Bosanid group here. And there we go. We are in the world, and doesn't look that dissimilar to the world map that we were using, but now we have all these other UI elements and stuff like that, and menus that we can go into. And right now we are paused. It's important to note that we're paused. If we hit spacebar, we will no longer be paused, and the game will start running. In this case, we have it set to speed 3. We could go down to speed 2 or speed 1. Speed 1 is very slow, and speed 5 is very fast. The game will auto pause whenever events come up and stuff like that. But whenever you want, you can hit spacebar to repause the game. And you're going to be pausing all the time because when you're managing your country, you don't necessarily want things operating in the background, especially while you're learning, right? So it's nice that we can basically do anything we want while the game is paused. We can send requests for alliances. We can ransom people out of our dungeons. We can make decisions as to our council. We can make different sort of event choices and things like that. We can enact decisions. So we can do everything basically while paused. It's just that since the game is paused, units will not be able to move, although you can queue up unit actions. So armies cannot move, and time does not progress, and people don't age, and people don't die, and stuff like that, right? So while the game is paused, everything is frozen in terms of the world state, but you could still be managing your country while the game is paused. So you're going to get very comfortable, or you're going to get very familiar with the idea of pause, unpause. I pause all the time because I like to think these things through. So right now it is January 1st, 867 AD, and we have it paused with game speed 3. I like speed 3. It's manageable. I just keep it at 3 and I forget about it. I don't even worry about it. It's a good rhythm for me. I pause when I need to pause and I let it flow when it needs to flow. We have the different map modes down here. We talked a little bit about these. For the most part, this game is pretty smart. If we zoom out, it'll show us that we're, absorbed into the Italian Empire. If we zoom in, it'll break down the Italian kingdom and it'll show our land here. We just know this is our land. We can click on our character down here and click on that to center ourselves on our capital there. So this is our capital, the County of Provence. We are the Count of Provence. So it makes sense that this is where we hail from. But the different map modes can be used to see how the world breaks down into the different duchies. Not all these duchies exist. Not all these duchies are formed in this exact way. The Duchy of Bohemia isn't literally controlled exactly in this way, right? In this case, it actually is, right? This guy is actually the Duke of Bohemia, and he controls all that. But you can see how, like, the Duchy of Provence is broken into these different groups. This guy doesn't own all of Provence. He owns one piece of it. We own 2 pieces of it, it seems. We actually have 2 different holdings. This guy over here holds a piece. One of our goals might actually be, hey, let's unify the Duchy of Provence and let's become the Duke of Provence. And that could be like the next step up on the ladder, you know what I mean? In terms of our fame and our dynasty and our renown, as that is our goal, is to make our house, our family house, our dynasty, basically to boost our renown, right? To be more respected, to get more benefits by being more of an influencer in the world that we live in, right? And having a legacy that will shape the world that we live in. So, and then once we think about duchies, we can think about kingdoms. We're actually we are a subject of the Kingdom of Italy. However, we are actually rightfully, our land actually sort of belongs to a future. We believe ourselves to be Burgundian more than we believe ourselves to be Italian, sort of, in a sense. So we actually kind of have aspirations maybe to actually form the Kingdom of Burgundy, perhaps. And then eventually we could go on to become the Emperor of France. Our house, right? Not our character itself, but our descendants might become the Empire of Francia. Who knows, right? We got faith. We got religious map modes here. This is a huge aspect in terms of who we can deal diplomatically with. Like, people of different religions, like the Orthodox, are not going to want to do relationships with us. We have Islamic nations here that are taking over the northern African coast and a lot of sort of the Christian Holy Lands over here, and so on and so forth in the Middle East. We have different sort of pagan religions and tribal religions up here. We have the Norsemen over here, and so on and so forth, right? Sort of a battle in Britannia over, is it going to be Norse? The Vikings come and take everything over? Is it going to be Christian? Is it going to be part of Christendom and good Catholic nations? Who knows, right? We have Insular, which is sort of like a branch of Christianity, and so on and so forth. So there'll be different sort of different branches of the main religion that will develop over time. We could make our own branch. We could actually make our own Christian religion as part of the game, which is kind of cool to do. Different cultures and stuff like that. We can see we're actually part of the Aquitaine group. So in many ways, we actually kind of culturally identify with this group in southern France, which kind of actually makes sense as we realize we're actually sort of part of this larger Francia area, this larger Francia region, and so on and so forth. So basically, those are the map modes. And anytime you get stuck or like, I don't know what I'm looking at on screen, you always want to go back to the realms, right? This breaks everything down based on who owns what, right? Kingdom of Italy owns all of this, but if we zoom in, we can see that we actually own this, right? This is what we own, and so on and so forth. So anytime you get to a little lost there, the realms tab is there. As we saw earlier, we could click on our character. And who are we? What is our character all about? Well, our character is August. So this is a personal lifestyle trait that we have. And we are a charismatic negotiator. So we're more of a diplomatic kind of character. We're zealous. So we are a God-fearing character, and we want, we are unshakable in our faith, our Christian faith. We're calm and we're diligent. So these are actually they sound pretty good, especially at this time period, right, of 867. Being a zealous is not exactly a bad thing. We get a number of different benefits from that, and so on and so forth. But, being calm and diligent, those seem like good things that for a ruler to have, to be honest. We have a good diplomacy skill. We have a pretty decent stewardship skill. as well. So these are basically on a scale of 0 to 20. You can go way beyond 20 if you really specialize your character, but just in terms of trying to understand, is this good, is this bad, so on and so forth. 20 is excellent, and 7 and 4 for our intrigue is terrible at 4. Our martial skill is poor at 7. Our stewardship is good at 13, and our learning is good at our ability. You know, we're an average in terms of our understanding of the world, our scholarliness, our sort of religious pursuits, and so on and so forth, right? Religion sort of ties into like culture and technology and innovation and science, but it also ties into sort of religious understanding and how pious we are as well. Because at this, again, time period, right? It's all about time period. Being more learned doesn't necessarily mean, you know, it does mean that we're more familiar with the religious cultures and stuff like that. Just more cultured in general, I guess. We actually have a child. And it looks like our child is our heir. Our son and player heir is this guy. And he actually is an astute intellectual, although his skills overall are not very good. Not very good. I'm not particularly impressed with that. We have a wife. She's 58 years old, and we're 58 years old. It's very unlikely that we're going to have kids because our wife is over the sort of magic number of 45. That's not particularly important to remember, but 45 does sort of relate to her fertility. We could see if she's good at it. She's actually she's sinful. She's lustful and gluttonous, and these are things that the Catholics deem and sadistic. Holy cow, our wife is absolutely the devil incarnate, basically, over here, for crying out loud. She's got all the deadly sins. She's also got a lisp, so presumably we kind of have to watch out for her. But she doesn't. She likes us, at least, so we don't have to worry about her, like, you know, stabbing us in the back, because she is, you know, deceitful and actually she's not deceitful. She's sadistic. She's sadistic. Anyways, we might actually, the funny thing is, I actually wonder if that would actually give us an option to divorce her because she's sinful, you know what I mean? She wouldn't like us, we'd spend a little bit of piety, but the Pope would accept. We'd have to spend piety, which we have 200 right now, so we could actually divorce our wife if we wanted to. We don't have any other sons, so if this guy was to die, it would be nice to have another heir. This guy's a decent prowess, so we probably have this guy as a knight. We could make this guy a knight in our army, and he could actually die in combat. I don't know. It's one of those tough things where it's like, do we want to try to have another son and have him take over and try to get this guy sort of either disinherited or killed or whatever? Because he's kind of like, he doesn't have skills that impress us, right? He's kind of a below average character in terms of his ability to do things. We haven't talked about the details of this. We're not teaching what it means to have a good learning skill or a bad learning skill, and you can read the tooltips and stuff like that and stuff as well. We're just sort of thinking in a thematic sense, right? Stewardship is our ability to rule the realm, administrative duties in managing our realm and boosting our economy. Martial skill is our ability to do things, all military related things, lead the armies, or train more troops, and so on and so forth. Diplomacy is our ability to make people like us, right? Both foreign politics or foreign diplomacy, external policy, foreign affairs, and also the internal politics. Once we get subjects, we don't have any subjects. We're too small. We're just a count. But if we become a duke, we'll have subjects, and those subjects will then essentially be more likely to, we'll be able to make deals with them and keep a positive opinion with them if we have a higher diplomacy. That makes sense, right? I'm just thinking thematically. We're not talking about any of these things in detail, right? This is just the thematics understanding. The intrigue is our ability to scheme and do hostile actions like murdering people or you know, kidnapping people and fabricating hooks and blackmailing people and stuff like that. And then we have our learning skill, which ties into technology and piety and so on and so forth, right? Just general culture in general. So there's going to be some buttons up here that tell us of immediate threats to our. There's a couple things going on right now that are important. One thing is there's this here. There's a request, or sorry, a reconquest. Oh, our liege, the king of Italy, is in a war right now to come down here and take a little bit of land from these guys down here. He's got 2,500 soldiers. We don't have to worry about this. This is a liege war. We're not in this war. This is a war that our king is fighting. Certain situations he might be able to call us into that or something like that. But in this case, it's just letting us know that our king is at war. That could make us a little bit more susceptible if someone was to attack our king or attack us. and use that opportunity. So our king is someone that kind of protects us, right? Italy, we're under this umbrella. Internally, we can scheme and we can plot and we can go to war internally. But externally, we're protected by the umbrella that is the Kingdom of Italy. So France won't, if they attack into Italy, if they attacked us, Italy would be basically honor bound to protect us as their subject. But Italy itself does its own things, and it's in its own war, and we're not really concerned with that as the Count of Provence, which is kind of nice. So let's just look at these things up here, because these are basically notifications of like the situation. What's going on right now? What do we need to manage right away? We have no lifestyle chosen. So we know that our character is a diplomatic kind of character. We know that we're August right now, and we'll see how that works once we open up this tab here. We have no lifestyle chosen. We can also hit this button down here to review our lifestyle, to bring up our lifestyle tab. Or if we were to hit any of these banners, it would take us to the relevant menu. So here we go. Choose a lifestyle. Well, it says down here, because we are a negotiator, we've had an education that leans us towards diplomacy matters. We actually gain additional life experience if we're focused on diplomacy. So there's an incentive for us to focus and double down on diplomacy. If we click on diplomacy here, we can see that, whoa, we've actually finished this entire tree. This tree, we could go through and read some of the benefits that we're getting from this. A lot of this has to do with being prestigious and all kinds of things. We can take a special decision here to commission epic decision. That's kind of cool. If we ever wanted to read any of this stuff, these highlighted terms can actually, we can bring up tooltips. And there's tooltips within tooltips that we can continue to investigate what all this stuff means to build more contextual understanding of what this means, because I don't know what this means. This says it's a decision that we can do, though, so we might investigate that, because this is a special perk that we got for doing this. It's like a Skyrim perk thing here. So we need to pick an overall lifestyle focus. It doesn't matter which one we pick here. It is true that thematically the foreign affairs one focuses on being a diplomat, and this one kind of double downs on the August stuff here, and the family focus kind of doubles down on this one here, but it doesn't actually matter. We could pick any of these, and we could still work on the family hierarchy. We could finish this out. It looks like Count Boson here is trying to become a patriarch. He's trying to complement his August trait with the patriarch. If he works down here, he'll be a patriarch. There's certain benefits that we could get here. We're getting extra fertility from this. We get more benefits by having friends and by having more children and stuff like that. So actually, that's kind of good. Boosting up our fertility is kind of nice. Although we're so old, I don't know if we're going to benefit from any of this stuff. We're so old, I don't know if we have time to build the relationships. We're 58. We're not going to make it that much longer. That being said, if we go family focus, we'll get more fertility. And with that fertility, maybe we'll be able to have more kids if we do divorce our wife and try to have more kids with someone who's younger. Alternatively, we could ignore our diplomatic specialty, and we could work on becoming a strategist, or we could work on becoming an architect. And boosting up our economy. So these different tabs give us different sort of things that we can do, and sort of focus on our character. But I think maybe it does make sense to, I mean, being scholarly is quite nice for a number of different reasons. All of these are fantastic. They're all incredibly strong. But I'm actually wondering if, yeah, let's do family focus. Let's just continue on the life that is being led by Count Boson here. And then when we have a child, we'll be able to have more control over customizing their future, developing their education, and developing them as a new character. So for now, there we go. We can do a family focus, and we can continue to work on the family hierarchy. Although we could have worked on the family hierarchy regardless of which of these we picked, right? Regardless, we're going to be getting a certain amount of life experience per month, and then we'll also get contextual events that will help us work down this tree and finish out this tree and get the extra benefits from that. In fact, an unmarried heir, our son is not married, so he's not able to be pumping out the kids and stuff like that. Oh, this is interesting. This person actually has claims on what looks to be a lot of land. This person actually has claims to different parts of West Francia. So that could be an opportunity to marry this person, bring these claims into our family, have kids. Are these even pressed claims? A lot of them are. Holy cow, this person even has claims to the kingdom of East Francia. It's insane. So this person is someone is of noble blood that has claims to noble land in the Francia regions. And if we were to marry this person to our son and they were able to have kids, those kids would have some sort of blood right to larger conquests in these northern European areas. Alternatively, we could go into here and we could search by inheritable traits, and we could look for people that have positive inheritable traits, like this person's Amazonian. So if our son was to marry this person, their kids could potentially inherit this positive trait. And our kid doesn't have any traits right now. He doesn't have any positive or negative traits. This person's beautiful. This person's intelligent. So some of these different traits, help these different characters in different ways. So we could actually just sort by like sum of all skills. Apparently this person's a really good intrigue character as well. I mean, the intelligent character, it could be fun to actually have Amazonian grandkids, Herculean grandkids. But the idea of marrying that person that has the claims is also super interesting. Super interesting. But that would take us down a path that I don't know if that would, I don't know. Yeah, let's do this. She's a lowborn, but she's got, well, the crazy thing is maybe we want to marry her ourselves. I don't know. It's one of the things, we have so many options. So many options. I think we request a divorce here. I think we need to have our own kids. I think we'll get ourselves a new wife and pump out some more kids before we do anything with our son there. Maybe our son actually, you know what the heck? Maybe our son is going to marry that person based on the claims. Marry this person based on building an alliance and getting some claims, and maybe that's what we're going to do. And then we'll marry someone for genetics and maybe have new sons that have sort of stronger genetics and stuff like that. Because that's one of the big games, right? We have to think about the future of our house and like, are those kids going to be there? Are they going to be intelligent? Are they going to be strong? Are they going to have claims? Are they going to have noble blood, right? All these things matter in terms of our future of a dynasty. There's different ways you can marry someone for 10 different reasons, for momentary alliances, for future children, for different claims, right? There's all these different reasons and things that you might diplomatically, and that's what it is. Marriage is a diplomatic action, very much so. It's how you build alliances and stuff like that. We have a number of different family members that can get married here, so we might actually want to work through that and continue to marry off people and see how we can grow our house and our dynasty by doing that, because that is a big part of the game. But I think for the most part, we've talked a little bit about the flow of the game. We've talked a little bit about our character. What we need to do is we need to continue to marry people off. And then we need to we don't need to talk about any of these currencies, right? Because these currencies will be explained in the context. But essentially we have gold, we have prestige, we have piety, and we have renown. We've learned that piety can be used to request things from the Pope, like a divorce, right? So that's kind of interesting. And we'll see other ways that piety is used and other ways that piety is gained, and so on and so forth. But the other thing I think we're going to talk about before we unpause the game in the next episode is all of these different tabs over here, like our realm, our military, our council, our court, our intrigue tab, our factions tab, our decision tabs. So this is how our world, the management of our country, and in this case our county, the management of what we own and what we control is basically dealt in through these 6 different buttons over here, 7 different buttons over here. So we'll go through those and look at some of the things that we needed to check on before we unpause, and then we're just going to start running the game, and we'll see how things evolve and how we have to make reactive decisions to the different ways that the world can evolve around us, and how we can think about things like war and preparing for war and so on and so forth, and expanding our influence in the different ways, diplomatically and militarily. So thanks everybody for hanging out here. If you guys have questions, please ask. Again, we're going very slow here, very step by step. We've talked about who we are in the grander world and how that matters. We've talked about our character and who our character is and how we can start to think about what that makes us good at, what that makes us bad at, and how we can shape and customize our character's decisions to play to our strengths and not our weaknesses. We've talked a little bit about our son and our heir, but the fact that we might actually want more kids and there might be a benefit to that, and we might be able to have better kids if we get a new wife, and we're going to actually pursue divorcing our current wife, asking the Pope for that, and getting new kids, hopefully, and pumping out some kids in our late years before we die. and a number of different things. So thanks everybody for hanging out during this first episode. Again, please ask questions and just general comments and suggestions and feedback in the comments. I read all of that stuff and respond to nearly all of it. And I will see you guys in the next episode.